I'm Lance Wigton, and again, I'm with Beth Keop. It's my pleasure to be with Beth Keop. She is a counselor. She's just recently gone out on her own and started Keop Counseling. Highly recommend finding out more about Beth and times available that she could counsel with you. She is counseling with me today, though, right here live on a podcast, because we originally started a podcast, which you can go see, about emotional intelligence. And it started a whole nother conversation. And that conversation was about how people are in relationships and the problems they have to have healthy relationships or creating better relationships. And the premise, I realized from just one session with Beth, was that we really have a lot to do with that. And so, Beth, my hope is for this series, and I'm calling it, "What's it like to be in a relationship with me?" Now, of course, I mean me universal, not me personally. But we have a lot of relationships all over. We have work relationships. We have, there's love relationships. There's family relationships. There's people that we have relationships through kind of shirt tail through social media. But the one thing we have in common is ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so the idea would be that there are probably people that you're in relationship with and you would like to change them. But that doesn't work well. But the one thing we can do is take a look at ourselves. And really, there's a good chance that might improve all the relationships around us. I guess my first question then would be, how do I know how I'm doing in relationships?
Mm-hmm. So, feedback. So responses is what I'm expecting to have happening. Is am I getting maybe to some extent a little bit of what I want? You don't want to be in a relationship where you always get what you want, because that's also a problem. But really understanding the ripple reactions that's happening around me gives me a good idea. Am I good at this or am I not? Do I have close friends? Do people tell me when I mess up? Do I want to hear when people mess up? Do I have people that know me closely and I know them closely? If I'm in trouble, do I have anyone to call? Or do I just depend on me because I'm there? And again, there's good reasons. Sometimes we have some of those. It's not all this you're bad. There's reasons for that. But if you're like in a crisis and you don't have anybody to call, or you have one person to call, I would ask, what do healthy relationships look like for you? And how are you developing those? Or are you somebody that everybody else calls when they have a problem? And you're always on the phone and you're always available and you're always helping everybody and everybody just wants to know your advice and all of that. Also healthy boundaries.
Right. That's not great either.
Yeah. And anything that we talk about often, there's just two sides of the pendulum. Neither are awesome. Some are more acceptable than others, but then neither extreme is really good. In the middle typically is where God sits in health he sits.
So I think, maybe this is just my fear. I don't know, but I'm just going to throw it out there. Okay. We're all friends here. You're a counselor.
Friends.
I see things like American Idol, right? Or a lot of competition shows. And the people that were around them said, you should get on that show. You could do a great job. And then you watch them on TV and you think, who are these people that are around them? Because they are lying to them, because they're terrible.
Right.
I'm always afraid when we're talking about evaluate yourself. What is the feedback you're getting? I am always afraid that the people that I am in relationship with are either trying to blow sunshine up my skirt, or they, maybe they're broken. Maybe they're, the way their vision isn't very good, and so they're saying, "Hey, I think you're great." How does one find the truth? And I feel like if I can't answer that, where do I go from there?
Right. Yeah. So I actually hate American Idol tryouts and things, watching them.
It is.
It's really
it is.
good work. I actually will intentionally watch them to work on my own emotion skills because I'm like, I can't. Why didn't anybody love you enough? Is what that's
Exactly.
always what I think. You have to have people around you love you enough to say, no, sing for us.
Yes.
They don't have to crush your singing dreams. They just don't have to put you on national television. Oh, especially when they're like, you're wrong. My family says I'm amazing. I'm
Right.
like, okay. Anyway, I get uncomfortable, but
Yeah,
I'm allowed to be uncomfortable.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So I think sometimes you do have to find out whether or not you have people blowing sunshine in a sense. What I would say is if you never get your feelings hurt, that's a clue. If you're never getting feedback that makes you kind of mad or defensive, probably you have people who are sunshine people. Because you shouldn't be happy all the time. Iron striking iron is what God's word has to say about that. And people's hard edges smash into each other. So if you're not running into anybody else's hard edge, I would say something's up with the feedback loop you're getting. Because it should be uncomfortable. There should be some conflict there. It doesn't mean it has to be like, they're like, you suck as a person. But like, you know, if I have my boyfriend say to me, man, that was kind of a sassy statement you said to your mom. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. I'm like, okay, yeah, it was. Right? And I need some time to process that. But I need people in my life who are willing to upset me. And if that's not happening, that's a pretty good clue. How you go about finding out kind of depends a little bit on how far into the sunshine world you are or how isolated you are. Because the other thing that can happen is maybe you're like, well, I don't have any sunshine people. It's probably because you don't have anybody. You may be in proximity to people, but you're not connected enough to be getting or paying attention to feedback. I'll guarantee you're getting feedback, but you just may not be paying attention to it. And so noticing what happens when I come in the room. Does everybody go quiet? Or was like, hey, how are you? You know, what are the responses you get when you enter a room, when you exit a room? Did anybody even care that you left? Are you connected enough to even be noticed? Those kinds of things. So there's ways to kind of start to look at yourself a bit from a observer perspective. Most of the time it's going to be after the fact, what happened and looking backwards. It takes skill to get to present, which you can. Most of us start with looking back. I want to know how that soccer kick sucked. I go back and look at the video, right? So in sports, it makes sense. I go back and look, and then I improve. Well, emotions aren't any different. It's still skill building. And so if you have no idea, you're not sure, and you wouldn't even know where to start with some of that, you're going to be doing some looking back on stuff.
So, but the idea would be that the more times that you're able to think about different scenarios, the better, the wider range of people that you're going to be basically pulling information from, at least in your memory, the more accurate that information is going to be, because it's such a broad, you know, people are, their responses to you are going to be all over the place, and you can kind of bulk some of them together.
What you're looking for are themes. Where is the theme in what I'm hearing? So if I just take this one situation where that friend said I was a terrible friend and hated me and all this stuff, well, her mom just died. She had been in the hospital and I didn't call her right away and I missed her. Maybe the feedback I'm getting on that isolated night may not be accurate. But if I'm hearing I'm a terrible friend from her, I'm hearing that from my mom, heard that from my teachers growing up or whatever, there's a theme there, then I can start to pick it up. And so that's one of the things for me on...
When you say pick it up, you mean more like own it.
Notice it.
Yeah. Oh, notice it. Okay.
Yeah. So like,
this might actually be a thing.
Right. Like, so for example, a couple weekends ago, I'd gone to dinner with my mom and I just didn't have patience. I'd asked her a question and she took 15 minutes to answer what was the sermon about. And I was like, can you just tell me what it's about? And I just lost patience with her. She didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
And I was like, Mom, I'm sorry. I'm a little cranky.
Right.
Simultaneously, 2 hours later, got in a fight with my boyfriend. So I'm like, who's the common denominator of the situation? It wasn't them. It was me. Who's actually cranky? You know, if I wanted to blame somebody else. I'm the common piece here when things are kind of going chaotically. So if you're like, I just am around a storm of people and relationships just always seem to suck. If you're the common thing in every one of those environments, you have a piece to play. Now, it's not always you, and blaming's not helpful. But if you're not willing to stop and take a look, if you're the common piece, you're really going to miss an opportunity to grow.
I think that's really, I was looking at more just facts, longer term. Yeah. But you're right. There are short terms where it's like, people people always say, well, men are simple, and maybe we are. But it's like, my 2-year-old grandson, he'll be completely off, and so you go, has he slept? Has he eaten? Well, if he hasn't done those two things, you don't know what you're going to get, and it's usually not very pretty. Well, on a short-term basis, you could just go and start, wrecking relationships wherever you go, and it's like, well, this is terrible. Why are people reacting this way? So there is a short-term and a long-term, and I think that is good to evaluate. Obviously, both things, because you could, if you constantly are looking at why is this person upset with me all of a sudden, and you don't own the fact that you're tired or hungry or whatever, for whatever the issue is, then that's a problem. But in this longer range thing where we're talking about a broader, day in, day out thing, self-assessing is still confusing to me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not even totally sure what it is.
Okay. So if self-assessing or self-awareness is another way that we word it. Do I have self-awareness about who I am and all of that? It's knowing yourself as who you are is what you'll hear some people say, but even the dictionary definition is having like conscious knowledge of your own character, feelings, motives, and desires. Do I know all of those pieces? Do I have some understanding of that? Because then I can start to manage it. If I don't know it's there, I can't manage it.
Wow. That sounds easy. But I know, and maybe, maybe I need to go see counseling. But I'll do things and then I'll realize, well, actually, I was motivated by something else altogether, and I almost protect my view of myself.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if it's a justification, but it turns out really that wasn't the motivation. So when you're talking about a conscious, I feel like I can fool myself about myself.
Right. That's why it's really important, I think, in this process, which we might cover more later, is that you need feedback. So self-awareness is not done in a bubble, which is funny because it's self, right? Self-awareness. But God didn't design us to be alone. And so in having God in relationship, you develop knowledge about where you are, what your coping skills are, the things you've done. We talked before last time about I learned these things to cope with whatever, and they can be damaging in relationships. I'm very controlling in my relationships because I've been out of control, and I know what happens with that way, so I'm going to do this because I'm going to protect these relationships, and the more I pull on people, the more they pull away from me. Or the more that I can't trust anybody, and so I push people away. Whatever those might be, those skills to have feedback is really important. I think the other piece to be really fair about is this is a very painful process, and I don't actually mean figuratively painful. Looking at yourself where those things are is actually physically painful because it causes emotions, and your emotions actually physically show up in your body. And so being willing to look at yourself in the mirror, like anybody, well, I shouldn't say anybody, but many people, if you're like, this is a bit intense, but to stand naked in front of a mirror and just look at yourself is awkward and uncomfortable. To then be positive, right? Most of us are like, we would shred ourselves. This is terrible. Please just take the mirror away. I don't want to do it. I remember the What Not to Wear show, and they had the 360 mirror, and everybody's like horrified as they see themselves, right? And that's just your physical being, let alone your character, your inner who you are, your spirit, and that kind of thing. That vulnerability is actually painful. To be that exposed, because even like from the garden, we try to cover ourselves up. Like shame plays a significant role in my inability to look at myself, and so we literally covered ourselves. We tried to hide even from God in that piece. So to be vulnerable enough to say it's okay to not be perfect, Jesus was for me, which is a whole other conversation, but that piece is opposite of what our flesh nature wants us to do. And it takes a lot of courage and a lot of understanding of grace to be able to look in the mirror, and then the ability to withstand some pain, because it's really difficult and hard. I know, at least for me, and everyone's different, but for me, looking in the mirror was so hard because I loved people so much, and looking in the mirror at having to own that I was hurting people when I actually wanted to love them hurt so bad, because I was so not what I meant to do. And so really being willing to look at that takes guts.
It is, would it be fair to say, because I think, just listening to you talk about it and the way that I know, at least for myself, I can defend, I can protect myself against myself.
Yeah.
By the way, already in this podcast, I am saying things that when I say them out loud make no sense whatsoever. But I hope you're staying with me, because in my mind they make sense. Anyways, I'm protecting myself from myself. And because even maybe my subconscious, I'm vulnerable. I don't want to go into a particular area because there is some serious hurt there, and now I'm trying to defend myself. But the reality is I'm keeping myself from like you said, hurting people in the future. I'm keeping myself from real relationship with other people and real relationship with God. So would it be fair to make this statement? It is a short-term good with it's a short-term bad with a long-term good.
Yes.
Because our goal would be, it's worth to go through the pain, because the goal would be better future relationships.
Yeah. It's the part of the mountain where you're like, I hate you right before the view.
Right.
At least for me. The view's worth it. Not everybody thinks that's the payoff, but I do.
Right.
I don't hike because that's great. I hike because the view's coming.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So definitely it would be short-term pain for long-term payout, because it's like this. You're in pain no matter what. Because if you have unhealthy relationships, they hurt.
Right.
Like if the people take advantage of you or you're isolated and alone, doesn't matter which side of the pendulum you're on, it hurts. This hurts, but leads to less hurt.
Right.
So you're going to be in pain either way. So it's about pain that keeps me stuck and just equals pain, or pain, relief. And again, not perfectly. This is a lifelong sanctification process, your whole life. But you can find moments of relief. And if you're pretty miserable and constantly in pain right now, this has no hope for you. This gives you hope for change in the future.
Right. This has no hope for you because it is it's a continual loop. You're just doing the same things over again. Unfortunately, depending on how bad this loop is, the names are just changing that you're in a relationship with, and you're just going to get more names, and you're just going to
you're going to have more jobs you couldn't keep, more boyfriends or girlfriends you couldn't have. Your children will continue to not talk to you, and now your grandchildren won't. Whatever that might, like, people go like this when you come in their room, and you're going to hear those hurtful things. Like, that space is going to continue over and over again.
So I would like to look at myself, so would someone listening to the podcast. What is the beginner level way to start to do that? How do I know who I am?
Right. So a little less painful way to start
That's
off.
what I'm shooting for.
Right. Because here's the thing. We don't jump in. Honestly, you don't. Like, if I'm going to do a workout, I don't take my very first workout to go run 25 miles.
Right.
That's stupid. You get hurt, you give up, you don't come back.
Right. I don't want to join a
mile.
triathlon.
Maybe you don't even walk a mile. Maybe you get off the couch. Depends on where you are in your journey. So being honest about how much have I actually taken a look at myself before, and it's okay to take baby steps. So a great place to start is to consider your values.
Okay.
So what do I care about? Some people can go.
Yeah.
And other people are like, what is a value? So this is what's important to you. What makes life worth living, not worth living? What makes what I get up in the day have purpose, not have purpose? And I think we'll talk a little bit more later, but talking about reactions to that. But really, what do I care about?
I feel like this could be a big gap, even when it's a beginner. It still seems like a large jump. And the reason I feel that way is because when you first asked me that, my first thing was to say, almost, the canned answer, the thing I should say.
Yes.
Well, it's family and it's puppies and.
Right, which, by the way, that's probably one of the, again, should I talk about with a lot of people I work with, shoulding on yourself.
Right.
That piece is shame. So I'm already shaming myself about what should be. And if I am in that space of shame and should and all of that, I'm not going to get self-awareness. It's going to be a big problem. That should is already a signal of defense, because this is where I am.
Then
so,
how does one, and maybe this is homework, but how does one then actually find out what their values are?
Okay, your reactions are a really good place to start. So one of the things that I do in my class that I'll be doing this fall at the church on Thursday nights would be actually taking a list and looking off of it. Sometimes it's not, I care about it, but I don't have the word for it. And so really you need two parts of your mind. One side's the emotion creative side, the other's the logical word side of it. And so I'm like, I got all these feelings about it, but I don't have a word for it. And so putting it into words starts to help me give control of it, and I actually start using both sides of my brain, and I'm more effective that way. And so finding the words. So sometimes it might be looking at a list of like, what are these things? Oh, I do care about that. Oh, I do care about that. And again, how fast you need to filter what that list is different for everybody.
Right.
Some people might need to stew on that for several months, and some people are like 10 minutes, I already know. Right?
Is that something that we could attach to this podcast?
Yes.
So because I am a slow burner, I
Yes.
like the idea of dwelling on something.
Yeah.
And really trying to dial in on what reality is.
Yeah. So you could have a list. Another is to just pay attention to what makes you mad, what makes you sad, what makes you happy. So, and I know we'll talk about it. All of us have responses when people violate, honor, or neglect our values. When someone does something like, you're like, I care about grace. Grace is really important. And I totally mess up. And I go to my boss. And my boss is like, you know what? You're a good employee all the time. It's okay. You made a mistake. Oh my gosh, the boss is the greatest boss ever.
Right.
This was the best thing. Like, woohoo.
You're 0 to 50.
Woo! Right? If grace is really important to me and my boss, I made one mistake. I came in 2 minutes late. There was a car wreck on the freeway. She knows there's no other way off the freeway to get there. And she's like, what is your problem? Why can't you get here on time? How are your employees ever supposed to respect you as a manager if you can't get here on time? You were 2 minutes late today. Whoa. I'm going to have a whole different set of reactions to that because grace matters to me. Where are we at with that? Right?
Also 0 to 50, but it's on the reverse
Right.
side.
Whooped. Right. And so, or like if words are a big deal to me and I really care about words, and then I never hear from my boyfriend, I love you. He says it all the time. But if I
Hypothetically speaking.
right, didn't ever tell me that, I'm going to start having a response and a reaction to the fact that this is getting neglected. This isn't getting addressed at all. So it's not a direct violation, but it's not being attended to.
So I can see why this would be huge. So the idea of me going, well, these are the values I should have. But if that isn't even real, and I don't even own my own values, and then you're stepping on my values or praising my values, I'm all over the place, and I really don't even understand why I'm reacting that way.
Right. If you feel a little bit like, I just don't know why I do that.
Right.
That's likely you don't know a value. If you are like, I feel confused and lost, I genuinely am trying, I don't get it. Typically, there's something that's happening. Someone honored, violated, or neglected a value for you. And so starting to understand what's the source of that will really be significant in helping you begin to have healthy relationships, build that self-awareness. But what do I need? What do I think is important? And if I can't do that for myself, and that's why I think self-awareness is so important. If you can't do it in yourself, you're not going to be good at it in other people.
Right.
And we like to say, yeah, I am. I'm really good at knowing.
Right.
Well, you're really good at judging people, and sometimes you get it right.
Right.
But if you don't actually know what your stuff is, it's really hard to become aware of it in somebody else's, because you can't even get yourself out of the way because you don't even see that your hair's in your face to let alone see straight about it. So you got to get your stuff out of the way so that you are able to see somebody else's. But if I don't know, you're making my boss giving me feedback, and I have a hard time with, I really care. One of mine that is real is that I care about excellence. I care about doing things well. I think who I am represents Jesus. I'm in a community of mental health that Jesus is not necessarily always super highly involved, and I want to be one of the best employees there because I care about God's reputation. So when I get feedback, sometimes I have to work through my response to that because I'm like, is it threaten a reputation I'm trying to build? And then I have to be, woo, we got to talk about that, right? So some of my stuff. So I care very much that, about God's reputation, being a good employee and all that kind of thing. So the feedback, I can actually stop that loop on the feedback from my boss because I'm too having a response to that. That instead, if I know this about myself, that I'm having this response, I can set it aside to go, no, my boss, I need to hear the feedback because that's actually what's going to help me be a good employee and be approachable and help me be better like I would like to be.
So let me throw this out as a scenario. When I'm talking to people, let's say that I think whatever I said to them should be about a 3 on the scale of 0 to 10.
Right.
But sometimes I notice that depending on what it is, all of a sudden they respond to it as an 8.
Right.
Okay. And then I think to myself, now what is the difference between that and that? And so that's what if you know what your values are, then in that conversation where you're having with somebody is now it's on the other side. Now it's a 3 coming at me. I already know. I already hear this as an 8, but I'm going to catch it. I own my values. I know what my values are. I know this is a hot button for me. I'm going to calm down. I'm going to try and ratchet down to a 3 and be appropriate, and not blow up the relationship just because my values were either supercharged or hurt. Right.
So I think that's really important, that piece, because sometimes there may be a clue for you as to why you got an 8 reaction when you did a 3. Like maybe there's a lack of awareness about tone, facial expression.
Right.
Like, oh, you did that wrong. Oh, you did that wrong. Like, whoa, we're like, I just said the same words. I don't know why you're giving me that face, right? But often in this process, we're talking about self-awareness, I want to know why I'm going to a level 8 when I logically know it should be a level 3.
Right.
Okay, they didn't put the cap on the toothpaste. Why am I now chucking the toothpaste in the bathroom, yelling around, stomping the doors? Why can't anybody in this house ever clean anything? Okay, it was toothpaste lid.
Right.
Whoa, right? So there's something going on there. There's a value. There's some opportunity to be curious about my reaction. Because if I calm down later and go, does it really make sense to be at an 8 about this, or does 3 make better sense? And I seem to hit 8 a lot. Why? And again, just like you're just going to look for themes, because it's going to show up over and over again. And so that's where if the list doesn't prompt you, being able to look at my reactions and my responses is a good chance to do it. The last place that I would say if you really want to grow in your self-awareness is to invite other people into the conversation.
Oh, that's good.
And so it's painful. It's really hard because now I'm not just in front of the mirror naked. I'm asking everybody else to come look at me naked in the mirror.
That is different.
And again, I know it's kind of an awkward metaphor, but really emotionally, it's like that. It's that painful to be emotionally vulnerable about, here's what I'm not good at. But even for some people, they may be really good at that. Here's what I'm good at. Having be vulnerable about the things I'm good at. We have a lot of people out there that have a hard time owning the positive, and they're really good at shredding themselves. And so that vulnerability requires the good and the difficult, the feedback, and to be able to accept both. And so, like, a good homework assignment, if you're really clueless, you make a list, you look at your responses, and you came back and went, Beth, I still don't get it. I don't get it whatsoever. I would still say try to make your own list first. Things to pay attention to, like, how do you spend your time? How do you spend your money? What do you spend your time in your head thinking about? Those are excellent clues as to your values. If I think about what that person said to me all day long, I care about something going on there. If I am obsessed about money, whatever those things are, those are value points, or I wouldn't be having a response.
So we've got this list. So it's kind of a 3-step process. I'm getting okay, because I want to do this beginner stage. I am a little frightened, but I do want to do this beginner. I'm going to go through this list, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to see these words, and I'm just kind of gauging myself, kind of like a Richter scale. I'm kind of saying, oh, there's nothing going on there. Oh, there's something. Okay, maybe I circle that. Is that okay? Then the second step is not to talk to other people. It's Responses.
Your reactions.
My reaction.
And again, your reactions, whether somebody else notices them or not. And our reactions are different. So, like, my reaction when I get mad at blah, 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 blah,
Right.
my boyfriend's is like an eyebrow raise,
Right.
right? So it doesn't have to be a loud reaction. Your reaction for you. Did your heart rate go up? Your face get flushed? Did you have an instant want to hide, run away? Did you want to punch someone? Again, doesn't mean you do it. But maybe I have this response, and I'm like, whew, I didn't even know that was there.
Mm-hmm. And you also said something I thought was really good. We've said a lot of things, but which is, what are you spending your time on?
Yeah.
And then the other one, which is, I think is really prevalent in today's culture, which is, what are you obsessing about? What are you continually thinking about?
Researching, looking on the web, Facebooking. I have to see this about this family, and what do I compare myself to other people about is another ideal. Oh, they're doing it all right. I'm doing it all wrong. There's a value in there. When I'm comparing myself to somebody else, I'm pulling a value in.
Mm-hmm.
So those are other ways to kind of notice. But I think one of the last pieces I would invite for homework would be ask 3 people in your life, what are my 5 most important values? You're going to get, which again,
No prompting.
No, and don't be like, and I care about these things. That's not self-awareness.
Right.
Which is a clue to you if you don't have people to ask.
Right.
There's some things there. Or you're worried that they're not going to tell you the truth, or they all tell you just all rosy things or whatever.
Right.
Another way to ask that question would be, what do you think makes me mad? What do I get upset about? Maybe upset, because if anger is a big thing and it's not safe for you. What do you think makes me upset? Those are other clues to values. What are things that you think that you know about me that make me really happy? And again, if you don't have anybody to ask that question, that nobody knows you well enough, that's probably a strong indicator of isolation. And again, maybe you're isolated for good reasons. You've been hurt. Like, there's a reason you learned to do that. So, but I would highly recommend, if you're wanting some of the best feedback, is to find people from different sectors of your life. Work might look different than home, and then a friend that's not connected to home. So, because what the hope is you're looking for themes. You're not looking to be like, oh gosh, I suck because they didn't say what I say is my number one, whatever.
Right.
But you're looking for themes because, again, we have that should, shaming, comparison mentality. What you're going to find from your people is, what is my value? Because I may want this to be what's important to me, but I'm not being honest with myself about what actually is important to me, because that's what I spend my time and energy on. If my family matters, I spend time with my family.
Right. I think it's really good. It's a little nerve-wracking, but I think it's definitely worth the work doing. So we have our homework, and next week, or next time we talk, next time we do a podcast, we are going to be talking about what we do with those reactions.
Yeah.
These are our values, which I think is a huge step.
Yeah.
And then what do we do with these reactions now that we know these are values?
And I would say, give the people you're asking feedback from time to answer you, and you're going to get better responses than if you're asking.
Yeah.
So, like, if I were asking Lance, he's not going to rattle stuff off. He wants time to stew on that.
Right.
I would rattle stuff off or whatever. But really likely the best responses would be that. And even a step above would maybe ask them to put it in writing for you, so you have time to really consider it.
Oh, that's good.
And then you can look at what I think it is, what I'm getting feedback, and look at that as a whole picture and look for themes. And that's going to be a real indication for you pretty quickly.
Okay, that's very good. Beth, thank you for coming in.
Yes.
And we hope you join. We hope you do the homework, you do the attachment, do the 3 things like Beth talked about, even though they're not very easy. And we'll join you again for What's It Like to Be in a Relationship with Me?